Right, welcome back to another book review. This is about a Scottish naturalist, Charles St. John, one of the greatest natural history sporting writers of the Victorian age. And this is his book. And what I'm going to do is I'll put some slight music to it, but I'm also going to read you out his chapter on March as you sit back and relax and have a look at his book and listen to one of his chapters. March, I picked this because that was the month I was born. March the 1st, 1847. I drove over to Gordonston to Spinney. I was much amused and interested by seeing the immense flocks of wildfowl that were congregated on and about the loch. The teal kept up a constant whistling during the whole day, and so did the widgeon. All the different ducks were pairing up, and although on the water, they appeared to be one of a confused mass as soon as they rose. I observed they all flew to and fro in pairs, even in the great flights, as they passed from one end of the loch to the other. Every flock was divided into pairs, which had a very curious effect in the air. I do not know a prettier sight than a vast number of waterfowl, such as I saw today, filling the water and the air above it, and uttering their various cries. The coot's manner of rising is very peculiar, flapping and running along the water for 20 yards before he got well on wing, making a great noise and sending the water in all directions around him. Once on wing, the coot had a great resemblance to a black cock in manner of flight, etc. On the water, this bird seems very high, giving one the idea of a blackened bladder floating about. The widgeon, on the contrary, swims very flat and low in the water, but on wing is quiet and sharp in its movements. The teal has a sudden and rapid but unsteady flight. There are a great many marks of otters about the loch. I conclude that they find plenty of flounders and eels in the muddy ditches and canals. The otters about Spinney sit in the rushes on the small islands, making seats like those of a hare. The keeper caught a beautiful male pochard, which had been wounded somewhere in the body, but apparently was not much hurt. Although disabled from flying, I took it home with me alive and turned it into a small enclosure where it amused as much by its tameness and confidence, beginning to eat worms and porridge immediately, and seemingly to enjoy itself in this new situation as much as if it had been always accustomed to it. The eye of this bird, of a very peculiar blood-red colour, and has a very bold and fierce expression. There are no enemies so destructive to the wildfowl as the carrion, or rather the hooded crow, which is the kind we have here. Though the carrion crow is not supposed to be an inhabitant of this part of the country, it is almost impossible to decide upon the line which divides these two birds, the black carrion crow and the hooded crow. No doubt the hooded crow is the common species here, but I have taken some trouble in examining these birds, and have killed crows of every shade of plumage from pure black to the perfectly marked hooded crow, and this without reference to age or sex. I have also seen a perfect hooded crow paired and breeding with one quite black. There is no internal difference whatsoever in the birds. There is often considerable variety in the size both of the black and of the hooded crow. Though pairs of hooded crows are common enough, I have never saw in this country, nor anywhere in the north of Scotland, a pair of perfectly black carrion crows. The hooded crow is a powerful, active, and very wary bird, feeding on almost everything which comes in its way. But preferring carrion, it often feeds on shellfish. I have frequently seen it near the sea rise to a considerable height with a mussel and drop it on a rock in order to crack the shell, an act which amounts to reasoning. It feeds as much on the freshwater mussels, the shells of which not being so strong as those of the saltwater mussel. The crow is able to break open without making use of the same plan. This bird also kills newly born lambs, picking out the eyes and tongue while the poor creature is still alive. It preys on young grouse partridges, hares, etc., etc., and is very destructive to eggs of small sorts. In certain feeding spots in the woods, I have seen the remains of eggs of the most extraordinary variety and number. No sooner does a wild duck, pheasant, or any bird leave its nest than the hooded crow is on the lookout, and I have no doubt that a single pair often destroys many hundreds of eggs in the course of a season. All birds seem aware of this, and pewits, gulls, redshanks, etc. attack furiously any crow which they see hunting near their own nests. Every day now shows the approach of spring. The swans frequent one particular lake, seldom alighting on any other piece of the water. This lake is peculiarly open and very difficult to approach, which is doubtless one reason for their fixing on it. Another is that in many places it is shallow. They can reach with their long necks the grassy plants growing at the bottom, on the roots of which the plants they feed. Day by day, at the beginning of March, the brent geese seem to increase in numbers. They feed on the grassy banks on the shores of the neck of land called the Bar. I heard of a falcon breeding in Glengarry. The keeper says that a very large light-coloured falcon bred at a certain rock, quite different from the common peregrine, being nearly white, that it always came out making a great noise from where it had nesting, and struck at his terriers. This seems very like the Icelandic bird, which is a very rare visitor. I have only known of 2 other instances of it being seen in this part of the kingdom. One of these birds was hunting about the Loch of Spinney and struck down a mallard very near us. This was very early in the month of March. The other I saw a year afterwards near Elgin, and a fortnight after that time I saw her, one was killed in Russia. In all probability, the same bird. The badgers hunt more and more every day at this season if the weather is open. Apparently, they wander several miles from their home. March the 2nd, 1847. I see the rooks building. They were very busy today, carrying up sticks from every direction. This well-known bird is common and in all this district, shifting its quarters at different seasons in the search of food, and immense to the supply to feed the tens of thousands which are sometimes seen together. With regard to the mischief done by the rook, the greatest destruction of grain made by it, just as the corn ripens and before it is cut, where the grain is lodged and at the edges of the field, it consumes a considerable quantity and destroys more. Right, guy, this chapter goes on for a few more pages, and we're coming to the end of this book, showing you it. So I thought I'd just give you a taste of the March chapter, just to give you a feel of what this book is about. It's about Charles St. John and his diary throughout the season. So very fascinating, and I've read a few chapters and it's got me grip. So I hope you've enjoyed this little book tour, book review, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye bye.